So I'm struggling to get into the habit of reading and studying my Bible on a daily basis. I'm going to discuss how to resolve that in this video. Now, this video is a part of a larger series called The Disciple on our YouTube channel, Bethel Pittsburgh. Go under playlist, find The Disciple. You'll find that playlist, and it's in category order. One of the categories is personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and a subcategory to that is through studying the Bible. Now, the previous video above this, I talked about the reason to study the Bible and the benefits of studying the Bible and the purpose behind it, to find some emotional motivation to pursue it. But this is some practical ways to get myself in the habit of studying the Scripture. So the first step in that is to make it easy to establish the habit for yourself. Now, we might think, well, the easy path is wide and leads to destruction, right? And the narrow, hard path is the one that leads to life. And yes, that's true, but there's a context to that. We see in Acts 15:19, they were dealing with the Gentiles coming to the church, and what are they supposed to do with the Gentiles. And one of the concluding statements in Acts 15:19 reads this way: "Therefore my judgment is that we should not trouble those of the Gentiles who turn to God." In other words, these people are coming to know Jesus Christ. Let's not make it difficult for them to do so. So there is a movement towards easy. Jesus even said, "Take my yoke upon you, because my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So there's a context. There's a time that easy's bad, and there's a time that easy's good. And when I'm trying to establish my habit of studying and reading the Bible, I want to start out by making it easy so that I can get into the habit of doing it. So how can I make it easy for me? Well, one of the most important steps is which translation you're going to choose to be reading and studying in. Now, there are different types of translations, and I've talked about that in some of our other videos, maybe in hermeneutics or Bible knowledge, and we'll get into more of that somewhere in this Disciple playlist. But there's different versions. All of them are basically saying the same thing. It's just how strict and accurate it is, or how readable it is. And that's kind of the competition when it comes to translations. Is the more readable it is at times, the more someone's own personal interpretation of the text comes in. The less readable it is, the less interpretation there is in it, but it's more difficult to read. So when I'm starting out, I want to make it easier for me to read, but I want to try to land in a spot that's still strict enough that I'm not getting too much, if any, personal interpretation. So there's translations that are heavily readable, like there's the National Children's Version and other children's type Bibles, if I really need help to get it readable. There's paraphrases like the Living Bible and the Message, but all of those or the New Living Translation, but all those translations are heavy on trying to make it readable, which means that the interpreter's personal and opinions can kind of sneak in there unintentionally. So if I can avoid that, great. If I really need help, I can go into those types of translations. But if I can land maybe on the NIV or the English Standard Version, those are kind of mid to closer to strict translations. NIV is more is closer to those other readable types, but it's a little further to the accuracy side. English Standard Version and New King James Version are closer to strict, but are still pretty readable, especially the English Standard Version. So I would try the different ones out. If you can understand and it's readable in the ESV or the New King James Version, that would probably be a good place to land. King James is Old English style. So difficult to read. Not that you can't understand it, but it's challenging. You have to strain at times to understand what's being said, and we're trying to make this easy. New American Standard, same thing. You kind of have to strain sometimes. It reads choppy, so we're trying to make this easy. So again, I would start probably with English Standard Version or New King James Version, move over to NIV if those are too difficult, and then move into those New Living Translation, Living Bible, Message, children's translations, and things like that if I need further help. So that's one step into making it easier for me to get into the habit of reading and studying the Bible. Another step is to use helps and resources. So if I'm reading the Bible and I'm not understanding what I'm reading, I'm not getting anything out of it, I'm going to start losing motivation to stay in that habit. So I need to do something to help with my understanding. Now, there's more things than this, but when I'm just trying to get it going, I might grab onto some resources, like I might use a devotional. So a devotional is a book that's centered around some kind of topic of interest, and the upside is I'm getting some interpretation and I'm getting some insight from somebody. The downside is often what happens with devotion is I'm just getting one verse and a lot of interpretation or opinion on that one particular verse, which is fine, but it's a temporary solution. But I can use that to help keep my interest into this habit of studying the Bible. Another resource is a study Bible. Study Bible is a type of Bible that will have notes at the bottom usually. Sometimes they're on the sides, but usually at the bottom there's these notes that are there to again provide interpretation. They have a corresponding verse number, so I'm reading, I get to a verse and it shows me there's a note, and I read the note and it gives me an interpretation. So again, it's improving my understanding of the text. The downside is, again, I'm getting someone else's interpretation and opinions, but again, I'm trying to mostly make this easier for me to establish the habit. Commentaries work the same way. They're basically a study Bible, but more things are commented on. Sometimes you can get a whole Bible commentary. That's a cheaper way to go because there's not as many notes on every part of that particular passage you're looking at. You can maybe find them on Amazon or on Half Price Books for maybe $30 to $50, but they're usually on the pricier end. A full commentary is on the pricier end if you get like a book that's a commentary that's just on one particular book, like the book of Hebrews or Exodus, for example. Those are going to be more pricey. But again, anyway, you could bring in resources that can help you understand what you're reading so that you're maintaining the motivation to keep going. Another resource is the Bible app. If you search in your apps, it's usually called YouVersion, Y-O-U, YouVersion Bible app. It'll usually have a brown Bible picture for its icon. And on there, it's a free app. So it's a great resource, free app. It has pretty much every translation of the Bible in the app. It has audio versions in there. It has all kinds of different languages, and there's also set devotionals and trackers to kind of give yourself reminders to read the Bible and different things inside that app as well, tutorials. So it's another great resource to kind of build your interest and as you're trying to establish a daily habit, a daily routine of reading, studying, interacting with the Bible. Then there is which book you choose to read. So now, ideally, we're getting the whole breadth of Scripture. We're reading every part of it over a period of time. So it's good if we can read from Genesis to Revelation. However, and you may have experienced this, there's certain parts of the Bible that are less interesting than others. So, for example, if you're reading in Leviticus, you've got all these different regulations and laws. You've got this weird bodily fluid passages and what to do with that and stuff, and sometimes we start to lose interest there. Or if you're reading somewhere in like Chronicles and you start reading a bunch of lists of genealogies, or when Numbers, they're numbering the different soldiers, or when you got the design of the temple coming into play, we start to lose interest in those passages. Or depending on your style of interest. So if you prefer stories, then when you're reading the epistles, you might start to lose interest. If you prefer logical thought being played out before you, then you would like the epistles, but you wouldn't like a lot of the Old Testament books that are just giving stories, or maybe even the book of book of Acts. If you like poetry, you would be interested in Psalms and Proverbs and Song of Solomon. But if you don't like poetry, you'll lose interest in those books. And so, again, it's good and important to make sure I'm getting the whole Bible in at some point. But when I'm starting out trying to just get myself to daily interact with the Bible, I need to make it easier for myself and just let it go, let that whole part of that commitment go for now, and I'm just going to read what I like. So if that means I'm just reading James over and over again, or Proverbs, or Revelation, or the Gospels, Genesis, whatever gives me interest, I'm just going to read those books until I get this a habit that I establish in my life. Though I do give a little caution, reading Revelation over and over again is probably... People usually don't quite understand what they're actually reading. But again, I'm trying to build interest and momentum in my daily habit of interacting with the Scripture. Another item that tends to get in the way of us getting this habit is just our schedule, the way we live our lives. And so one of the workarounds, so I'm going to want to first try to make sure I'm figuring out my schedule. So if I try to read it at night and I just keep falling asleep on it, then nighttime is not the best time. If I try to do it in the morning and I'm falling asleep at that time, then morning's not the good time. But if I'm up and alert, awake, and available morning, do it then. Night, do it then. If I'm at work and I get a lunch break and there's an opportunity there and I can focus then, do it then. I mentioned the Bible app using the audio Bible. So pick a translation that has the audio Bible available and just play it on your way to or from work. Or play it as you're taking a shower, if you can play it loud enough, or as you're doing the dishes, or just find a way to get into the habit of doing it. And you might say, well, I don't know if I'm picking up as much while I'm just listening to it. That may be true. But for now, I'm trying to get into the habit of interacting with the Bible. And if I remember that I'm going to plan on improving. So right now, I'm just trying to get myself into the habit of doing it. And then down the road, I'm going to start tweaking this to do it better so that I'm getting more out of my interaction with Scripture. But for now, I'm just trying to get into the habit. And this takes patience, and it's part of the struggle is we go into it and we're not seeing the amount of growth and such that we would hope that we would see, or we're not seeing a lot of stuff happen that we were hoping to see happen. We have to try to convince ourselves to wait it out and be patient, because it will come in time, especially as we improve the way we do it, because I might be reading and really having a hard time understanding without help. Even with help, maybe I'm still having a hard time understanding and I don't recall different things. Just remember, it's like learning a new language or a new skill or a job. You don't understand it right away. But as you get more familiar with the process of it, the more fluid you are. So if you've worked jobs in service and things like that, you use a computer and a software. Initially, it was like your head was going to explode, but eventually you figured out, okay, you were doing it almost mindlessly. You really got the system, or you really got the language, or playing an instrument. And it's just frustrating because first you're just playing 5 notes over and over and over again, and I want to be able to play a song, or I'm just learning all these terms in the alphabet, and I want to know how to say something to somebody in that language. And I have to know that it takes time, and we understand it with those things. We have to understand it with the Bible too. It's going to take time of me reading it, and interacting with it, and getting through the whole thing over a period of time, that at some point it's going to start to click and start to make sense. I just have to be patient with it. I would encourage you to start out, if you can, reading 1 chapter of the Bible a day. Again, whether you're selecting a book that you're really interested in or reading through the Bible, choose 1 chapter a day if you can to begin this process. And then lastly, some people are trying to think, like, what are the secrets that get me to do this? And there are things to remove obstacles, like I had just gone over, but at some point I'm going to settle in on it's a self-discipline thing. I'm going to have to just choose to do it. There's no big secret at some point. Once I've removed all the obstacles, at some point it's just I have to choose to actually start doing it. And so I hope that this whole picture helps you to begin this journey of interacting with the Bible. If you have any questions on that, we'll have further steps on how to deepen that down the road. But if you have any questions on that or anything in this series, please leave them in the comments. I'd be glad to respond to those. Or if you live in the Pittsburgh area and you would like to grow more in your faith in person, we'd love for you to join us at Bethel Assembly of God at 2501 Staten Street, Wednesdays at 6:30 and Sundays at 10 a.m. God bless.